Hi, I'm Grant from Blackmagic Design, and we've got a really large update today. We've got quite a few new products to brief you on, even a new camera. So let's get started. Now, first I wanted to talk about the Blackmagic Web Presenter HD. Now I have a Blackmagic Web Presenter HD running with an ATEM television studio in the rack here. It's a complete switcher and streaming solution in one rack unit. Now the new Web Presenter HD has been a bit of a hit with broadcasters. It's got a down-converted 12G SDI input. It's got a high-quality H.264 hardware compression engine. So it's the kind of thing broadcasters need. And with the hardware compression engine built in, it streams to YouTube and services like that without any external software. It can do it all internally. Now it's also got webcam support though, so you can connect it to computers. Now it's actually got two USB webcam connections, one on the front and one on the back. So you can use any video software because computers think it's a webcam, but it's actually a 12G SDI input. Now it's got a HD SDI monitoring output, which you can see on the monitor behind me, which has got a lot of status information on the quality of the SDI input signal. It includes a front panel with LCD and menus. So it's a great product. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to add a new model to the Blackmagic Web Presenter family, and it's called Blackmagic Web Presenter 4K. That'll give us two models in the family. The model here for for HD streaming, and we'll have the new model for streaming in HD or Ultra HD streaming. So let me show you. I'll bring it out. Here it is here. So you can see what it looks like. Now you can see that's the front there. It looks very similar. And I'll show you the back connections as well. I'll turn it around. There it is there. Now the model in the rack is set to stream in HD, but the new model can stream in HD or Ultra HD. Plus it's still got standards conversion built in. Otherwise it's exactly the same. So you get a streaming solution. So you can set the streaming solution on the front panel or in the utility. So it's pretty cool. Now let's switch over to that. So what I'll do is I'll change over. So I'll put this one here and I'll move this out of the rack because we'll switch it over. Okay. And then I'll put this one in the rack. And I need some power. And I'll change the monitoring output to here so we can see this one. There it is there. Now you can see that it's currently set to HD streaming. So what we'll do is we can change that in the menu. So I can show you where the menu is. So we go down to the front here. There it is. It's hard to use upside down. There it is. There's the menu button. So you can see I can go down to the streaming standard. I'm using it all upside down here. Whoops. Need to go to live stream and then hit set. And there's the streaming standard there. So I need to set. I can change that. So now I can scroll through and you can see the different standards there. So I can scroll through. So we'll do Ultra HD in, there it is. And I can go out of the menu. There it is. Now I'll need to turn, so now I've changed the menu, I can see the data rate change. I actually got to plug the SDI input in, so let's plug that in. So I need an Ultra HD video source. There it is. So there you go. Now you can see the data rate changes. That's the data rate actually recommended by YouTube for Ultra HD at 24 frames a second, which is what we're doing. Now when you're streaming in HD, the input will actually down convert. So if you have this changed to HD and you've got an Ultra HD source, it'll down convert. But if you're streaming in Ultra HD, which is what we're doing now, and you've got an Ultra HD input, it'll just pass through. Now, if you had a HD source and you actually selected Ultra HD to stream, it'll actually upconvert, which sounds a bit strange, but often you can be connected to routers, and so you don't really know what the input format's going to be. It can change input while you're streaming, so we actually will handle that, and it'll keep streaming if you change the input. You might get a small dropout, but it'll keep going. Obviously, that's not something you want to do if you're really streaming, just randomly changing input, but it'll handle it. Now the webcam has also been upgraded to Ultra HD. So when you plug into the USB, you can actually now do Ultra HD webcam, Ultra HD resolution. Now not all software really supports that, but the webcam will just switch to HD if it's using software that doesn't support Ultra HD webcam. Now it's got the same monitoring output. You can see there on the monitor, it's exactly the same. You can see the streaming standard on the monitor status. There's a whole lot of stuff there. Now we're actually using a Blackmagic Web Presenter 4K for this stream right now. So this stream's actually in Ultra HD. Although in some places, depending where you are in the world, sometimes YouTube actually switches down to a lower resolution. But you can check the settings on the bottom right-hand side of the player, and you should be able to select Ultra HD and then see a 4K stream. So I think this new model is going to be really exciting. It's going to be a great addition to the family. Now the Blackmagic Web Presenter 4K will be available today, and it'll be priced at $695. So we think it should be a really exciting model. It's going to be a great family. Okay, so now I wanted to talk a bit about HyperDeck Studio. Now HyperDeck Studio has done really well for us over the years, but the models are getting a little bit old now. We're really unable to do any more software updates. You know, the first model didn't even compress video. So it's really amazing how much we've added over the years, but we have hit a limit on what we can do. So today what we're going to do is replace the entire family of Hyperdeck Studio models. So let's start with the Hyperdeck Studio Mini. Now it's been a fantastic little model for us. It's popular as a recorder for HD switches, and we've added a lot with software updates. But again, it's time for an upgrade. We wanted to add some more types of workflows, and so we've got a new model, and a new model is called Hyperdeck Studio HD Mini. So let me check it out. I'll bring it out and show you. Here it is here. I'll just set it on top of the web presenter here. Oops. There it is there, so you can see it. So you can see it looks very similar to the older Mini model. You see from the front there. But it's actually quite different. It does have a lot of changes in it. And it's on the back that you can really see the difference. So I'll spin it around and you can see. I'll put it back there so I don't drive the camera guys crazy. There you go there. How's that look? So you can see the rear does have a lot of changes. Now we still have the reference generator included. The original Hyperdeck Studio Mini had a reference generator built in. It was great for multi-screen digital signage. It was really amazing that the old model had that. It was fantastic because it lets you daisy chain multiple units and sync them all together, and then remote trigger all the Hyperdecks to play together, so you keep everything synchronized for like multi-screen signage. So it's pretty cool. So what we decided to do is take that idea further and actually add a timecode generator built in as well. Now this is new. What it allows you to do is loop other Hyperdecks, so you can create an ISO stack where the first recorder will lock all the others. So you can loop the timecode out. You can see that there, there's the timecode out, and that's the generator, and there's a reference generator, and the inputs are underneath. Now it's also got 3G SDI in and out. It's got a HDMI output, so it's great for monitoring with ATEM switches. Or with ATEM mini switches, you can plug into those. It's got both AC and 12 volt DC inputs. You can see them on the back there. So you can have mains power or battery power. Now another new thing we've done, we've added USB-C on the back for recording the USB discs. Now that's also new. So you can record for really long durations on a single USB disk, because USB discs can get really big. You can even record your disk arrays. So look, we'll plug it in and check it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the streaming recorder here with the Hyperdeck Studio HD Mini. So let's do that. So what I'll do is I'll take this out and move it across here and stack it over here. Just get that nice. Okay, so we'll put this one in the rack. I'll give it some power. There it is there. And we'll need to plug a video input in, so I'll just use a program out of the switcher here. There we go. So let's do a recording. So I'll have to insert a media card, so I'll do that. Again, I'm using it upside down, so I've got to feel my way around. So let's do a recording. So I'll hit record, which is that button there. There it goes, now we're recording. So it's got dual media slots, which the older model had too, which means it can record forever. When that card fills up, if there's a second empty card in, it'll just switch to the empty card. Then you can hot swap the card that's full and just keep recording and keep bouncing backwards and forwards between cards. But it also has the USB disk support, so let's do a recording on that. So I'll stop recording, so you can see that there. Oops, I've got to find the right button. And I'll eject this card and I'll plug in a USB disk. I've got a USB disk here. So I'll plug that in. And now we can do a recording with that. So you can see it's come up there, it says USB 3 on the display. And I'll hit record. Now you can see I've got 61 hours of recording time, so you can really see how big USB disks are. They can fit a lot of recordings and for a long duration. You can see that there on the indicator. You can see how long that duration is. So that's 61 hours is a long time. Now it even works with USB hubs and multiple disks. So you can have a hub and then more than one disk, it'll switch to the disks. The ATEM Mini actually does that if you have a hub and multiple disks. It supports the Blackmagic multi-dock, which has got 4 disks in it, so it'll go from disk to disk. But what's also really exciting about the Hyperdeck Studio HD Mini is that also the USB works as a webcam. So if you plug the USB into a computer, it looks like a webcam. So that means any software will work. It's a bit like the web presenters. I think that's an exciting feature. I'm not sure what people are going to do with it, maybe for remote monitoring and things like that, but I think it's really exciting to have that feature built in as well. Now there's lots of other features too. You can see in the record menus, I'll stop recording, but yeah, we've got nice menuing system in it. Let me stop recording there. So you can see what I can do is show you the menus. So you can push menu down the bottom there, and you can see I've got the menus there. And I can go into different menus, and you can see the codecs. I can use the search dial. Sorry, I'm using it upside down again, so I'm There it is there. You can see all the different codecs we've got. So it records and plays back ProRes, DNX, and H.264 files. It also supports PCM uncompressed and AAC compressed audio. Obviously, PCM audio is used with ProRes and DNX, while AAC audio is used with H.264. So it supports also long file recordings. It'll do like 3 hours in a single file. And it also, one of the other things it does is it supports true interlaced H.264 files. Now that's really important when you're using 1080i HD formats, but it also is important for recording NTSC and PAL formats. Now archive content is generally NTSC or PAL, and it's interlaced. So what this means is interlaced, interlaced files are really an important feature for H.264. Now, if you're capturing from old decks, this is why you really need that. It's the old recording from old decks. It lets you keep the original format of the videotape unchanged, and that's really important because you don't want to do any kind of processing. You get that kind of Apollo 11 effect where you've got this processed imagery and there's not a lot you can do with it as technology improves later. What you can do is you can preserve the interlaced structure of the file on disk, and then you can apply different kinds of processing on those files as technology improves. Yeah, the processing you're doing today is going to be very different to the processing you do on those files in 10 years' time. So you really want that interlaced structure to be preserved so you can reprocess files in the future if you want to. So I think interlaced H.264 is a really important format. Now the new model also has 13 languages. It's got English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Spanish, German, French, Russian, Italian, Portuguese, and Turkish. And we've now added 2 new languages, Polish and Ukraine. We even have a light and dark mode. You might have noticed on the LCD that it's actually a new dark design. You can actually change it. Let me show you if I can use this upside down. I don't know how to scroll this up. I can scroll through to the setup menu. There it is there. And I can actually scroll through the settings down to dark appearance. See, there it is there. And I can set it. And you can change to a light appearance. There it is there. Or you can change back to, there you go. Oh, it just automatically changed back to dark because it was the first item in the list and I'm using it upside down, so I've got no idea how to use the menus upside down. So you can see it's really kind of exciting. It's I think the dark mode actually looks really nice. But again, you can make it look like the older models were at light mode only. This one does both dark and light mode. So the big difference, okay, what's the differences between this new model and the older HyperDeck Studio Mini that it replaces? Now this new model doesn't have fill and key outputs like the old model had. And the old model also had 6G SDI, so it could do some low frame rate Ultra HD. So 3G SDI in the new model supports SD and HD formats only, but not Ultra HD. So they're really the two differences. They're probably the two features that are missing from the new model. Yeah, but we think the features we have added are much more important. They allow you to do lots of new things, like the timecode generator and recording to USB disks are really much more useful features. And you can stack decks and then sync them all with the timecode and reference. So it allows that new ISO workflow where you can have a camera connected to each deck and you can have multiple decks all recording and the whole set records in sync. Then you can take those files and use them with multicam software for editing. So it's really exciting. Now there is a couple of other new features in the deck as well. The 1G Ethernet that's built in is actually much faster now, so you can do file uploads and deck control. So it's it's faster to do file uploads. So a good example of this is if you remote uploaded a H.264 file for digital signage, those uploads will be quicker. So it's exciting. So the model, okay, this model is not quite the same as the older model, but it really is an amazing feature set. It's also much lower cost. This new HyperDeck Studio HD Mini will retail for only $495. So it is dramatically cheaper. And this is one of the reasons why we could do that. Plus the HyperDeck Studio HD Mini is available now. So it's a fantastic little broadcast quality player and recorder. It's a really great mastering recorder, such as with the ATEM TV Studio switcher here, which we have in a rack. This is a switcher and recording solution now. It's a perfect ISO recorder now because you can stack multiple units, and also you can link them up and reference them all together and use it for large, multi-screen digital signage. But also with the H.264, you can do long-form broadcast logging, where you're recording a broadcast feed. So it's really a fantastic little recorder. We're really proud of this little model. It's not a low-end model at all. It's a very capable product. But we did think a little bit about the size. If you think about it, HyperDeck Studio HD Mini, if the design does have any kind of limitations, it's actually the transport controls on the front. The front controls are a little too small for tasks such as clip playback. It's just a little hard to use. If you're interacting with a lot, it's a little bit difficult to use. It's basically the penalty of a 1/3 rack unit design. It's a great size because we can fit it in a rack with a switcher like we've got it here, but the space on the front panel is a bit limited. So we thought, what happens if we made it a little bit bigger? And we're actually a little bit shocked when we tried it. Just by going to half a rack width, we can add a lot more features. It's kind of like a sweet spot. We get better transport controls, but we also get space for other things as well. In fact, it totally transforms the hyperdeck. So we have a new model that's slightly bigger and it's half a rack unit wide. It's called Hyperdeck Studio HD Plus, and let me bring it out and show it to you. Here it is here. You can see it there. You can see really how different it is. Just adding a little bit more width makes a huge difference. What we'll do is I'll look at the rear connections first. I'll move it around. I'll put it down so that way. Actually, let me get rid of this USB disk. And I'll put it down there so that the poor camera guys aren't chasing me as I'm wobbling around talking to you. How's that? I'll place that nicely there. It's a little bit crooked. There it goes. Looks nice. So you can see the connections there. Now, it's got 6G SDI in and out, which means it can record and play all SD and HD formats in H.264, ProRes and DNX, but the 6G SDI supports some Ultra HD. So it can record and play ProRes and DNX in Ultra HD up to 2160p 30. Now, web broadcasters don't often use high frame rates, so 6G SDI is really good for them. Now, even the HDMI connections will do Ultra HD up to 30p. It's only the H.264 that's limited to SD and HD resolutions. And that's why we're still calling the HD model, because not all the formats are supported in Ultra HD, but you do get a bit of Ultra HD, but you get everything in SD and HD, but the 6G SDI gives you a little bit of Ultra HD, but it's still really mostly a HD deck. Now the 6G SDI input has a loop out, which you can see there. Oops, wrong side, everything's upside down. There it is there, loop out. So you can loop out to other video equipment. Now, another new feature of this model is it's got the dual outputs. So the dual outputs allow for fill and key. So you can play back a ProRes 4444 file in HD. It'll real-time convert the alpha channel to a key output in real time. So you get a fill and key on those there. So it's great for live graphics into switches where you can key in the switcher. Now, we also have a new SDI format, sorry, a new H.264 format in this Hyperdeck Studio HD Plus model. It's called H.264 SDI. Now, in these Hyperdecks, you've got H.264 low, medium, and high, and now you've got a fourth quality level called H.264 SDI. Now, normally H.264 is an 8-bit 420 format. That's totally fine for streaming or computer playback. It's really what it's normally used for. However, H.264 is also a fantastic compression scheme. The files are much smaller and editing software is really fast on modern computers. I mean, the computers are so fast now, H.264 is really easy to edit with. So we kind of wanted to make a better version of it. We wanted to capture all the quality in the SDI standard. Now, SDI is actually 10-bit 422, so that's what the quality of the new H.264 SDI quality setting is. It captures 10-bit 422 and gets all the quality from the SDI connection coming into the deck. Now, this is great for archive because, like I was talking about before, the files are much smaller, but they've got every single bit of every pixel in the SDI connection. So it's really good. Now, actually, there is some software that doesn't support H.264 and 422 and 10-bit. So just check the files with the software you're using before you use it on a job. But I do think it's an exciting new format that's going to be really popular. Now, if you notice the back, there is a few other changes, of course. We now have space for an HDMI input as well as the HDMI out. So it's a great recorder for like consumer equipment, but it's also a fantastic recorder for ATEM Mini. You know, you can use it to record ProRes and DNX from ATEM Mini switches. Now most ATEM Mini switches, most of the models have recording for H.264 files. But ProRes and DNX use lower video compression and they're also 10-bit 422. Plus the new H.264 SDI quality setting is also obviously 10-bit 422. So that's also supported. So really adding a Hyperdeck Studio allows these formats to be recorded with ATEM Mini. That's great because ATEM Minis are actually 10-bit 422 switches. There's nothing low-end about an ATEM Mini switcher. They're professional internally. And so they're actually quite high-end switches even though they're small and they've got HDMI connections. So I think this is a fantastic companion for ATEM Mini. Now if you notice on the back we've also got a monitoring output. It's got on-screen overlays. Now these are actually the same overlays that Hyperdeck Extreme has. You'll notice also on the back there's an RS422 remote output connection. Now any button that's pressed on the front panel will be output on the RS422 remote out connection, and any command coming in will also received on the input RS422 connection or Ethernet will be output on the RS422 output as well. So that means you can loop remotes and trigger a whole stack to record. You just press record on one of the Hyperdecks and all the rest of them will go into record. So that's a really nice feature. And it also now has a 4-pin broadcast style power connector. So that's pretty cool. Now it's still got the USB for recording to external disks and of course that USB still works as a webcam. But anyway, let's see how it works. So first I'll plug it in. Now what I'll do is I'll get a Panoramic Mini rack shelf so I can sit it on top and it looks really nice. So hold on, I'll just get that and I'll put this here. Then I can show you the front. So there it is there. I'll just line it up. Make it look like a real rack of equipment, and then I'll set it in front. Set it on there. Now I need to add some power. So I've got a power cable here. And we'll also plug in a video input because I'll need a video source. There we go. Now you can really see how it compares to the HyperDeck Studio HD Mini below it. You can really get a good example of the differences between the two models, and there's not a lot of extra width, but you can see it's quite different. Now what we'll do is we'll plug in the monitoring output so you can actually see a live video feed from the monitoring out. So I'll plug that in. There it is there. Now you can see there's a whole bunch of overlays there. There's a lot of information. You know, there's like media status and time code. You can also see the input format on the monitor. So let's plug an SD card in from the other deck and we'll move it up and then we can do a recording on this one. So I'll get it down here if I can find it. There it is there. Now I'm using it all upside down. Oops, let me feel my way. There it is there. You can actually now see the media status. You can see I've got 6 hours of recording on that SD card. And the codecs displayed, we're actually using H.264 SDI on this one. Now the audio meter's there. This is set to 2 channels of audio, but you can actually, it'll reflect the number of audios channels you got selected in the HyperDeck in the setup menu. So if you've got 4 channels of audio selected, it'll show 4 meters. If you've got 8 or 16 channels selected, it'll actually even show 16 audio meters on the overlay, depending on the number of audio channels you've got selected. Now let's look at the front panel controls here. You can see with the larger size, we've got a lot more space for things. So you can see we've got much better transport controls. So let's do a recording. There you go there. And you can see they're really traditional style deck controls. Really nice, beautifully used. We've even got an input button, so you can change the input and select the input from the front. Now, you'll also notice we've got a headphone socket on the front. Now that's probably our most requested feature, but we thought we could go a little bit further beyond that. We've also added a speaker. So what you do is you can push to listen, if I can find the, see there's the sound coming out there. Now this is fantastic for ISO recording, because what you can do is you can go and check each unit to make sure they've got the right audio, and you don't need headphones. I mean, obviously it's nice to have headphones, but what happens if you walk up to a rack? You can just walk right up to a rack, push the audio monitoring and listen. So it's great. Now if you double press it, it'll lock on. So you can see there. And also you can adjust the level using the search dial on the front. So if you hold the button down and change the level, you'll notice there's a level indicator. Oops. See, there it is there. I'll turn it down a bit. So you've got some real fine control, and you can see the level indicator there that adjusts, and that comes up when you're holding the speaker button. So it's really nice. Now you'll also notice there's a remote enable button there. Now that's nice because it stops any Ethernet or RS-422 from controlling the deck. You still get the status back to the software or hardware that's controlling the unit, but it's just nothing can be triggered, and that's really important if you're doing a master recording. The last thing you need is some bit of software or something coming to the deck and stopping a recording when you're actually recording a master. So having a record enable is a really nice feature. Now as far as menuing go, it's got the same menus as the mini model. So let me stop recording and show you that to you. Whoops, if I can. Again, I'm using it upside down. So you can see the menus there. See they're the same menus that we have. And you can see, you know, whoops, wrong side. There you go through there. Probably should have spent more time doing learning how to use it upside down. So it's got all the features of the mini model, plus a whole lot more. I'll get out of the menu. Now, what I want to do is show you how you can record using multiple units. Now, I talked about this feature with the HyperDeck Studio HD Mini, but all the HyperDeck Studio models will now be able to do this. So what I'll do is I'll bring out a second model, I'll connect some power, and I'll place it next to the unit that we have here, and then you'll get 2 channels per unit. So here's the second unit. Let's see if we've got a card in there. So what you get is basically full redundancy with the 2 units in there. So what we want to do is we want to loop the timecode and the reference from this unit to this unit so they work together. So what I'll do is I'll plug in my power and timecode, which I forgot to do. I've got a second video source here. Getting a little bit tangled. There you go. Should come up. And what I can do is I'll loop my timecode and my reference. So on the back, I've got reference out and timecode out, and I'll just loop those. So I'm just plugging the outputs on the top here into the inputs on the bottom here. Now the other thing we need to do is we need to loop the remote. So what that'll do is it'll allow us to trigger the remote recording on this one from this one. So I've got a remote cable here. This is just a standard RS422 remote cable. So I'll plug it into here. I'll plug it into my input here. So a bit, there it is there. Now the other thing I need to do is I need to enable the remote on the second unit, which is down here. There it is. So what that'll do is it'll allow us to trigger it. Now when I start recording on this unit, it'll trigger recording on this unit. So let's do that. So here I am here. There you go. Now you can see that they're both recording and they've both got matching time code. So you can see them there. So this is really nice. The first unit is sending reference and time code and remote to the second unit, and it propagates up through all the decks in a chain. You can add more hyperdecks. You just basically add them and for as many channels as you need. Basically one for each camera. So this will be recording two cameras. You could add more. And then you can use any editing software that supports multicam to edit them. Of course, large broadcasters have so many channels that sometimes they'll just use a distribution amplifier and send their master timecode and reference straight to the decks. Because, if you have too many decks, then you'll start to get some propagation delay, but really it's fantastic for small setups. And, one broadcaster we know had 71 different hyperdeck studios at the same time. They had racks of them. So it's really amazing how big some of these can get. It's incredible. Now, one thing it's worth noting, I'm using synced sources here, and they're all locked to the same reference. And this is very similar to what a broadcaster would have. But we do have a software update coming soon. It's going to add an interesting feature. It'll add a resynchronizer to the input of all the hyperdeck models. So what it means, you can use non-sync sources for this function. Now this feature didn't quite make the launch, but it'll ship really soon. Now the menu that we're going to add into the menus is called resync input. And what it'll do, it'll keep the output locked to reference during recording. Now normally the deck will switch over and the output will be what, the video source coming in. But in this case, what will happen is the output will stay referenced like it is in playback, and the input will actually resync. So normally you'd leave this feature off. However, it lets you use the HyperDeck's SDI output to lock cameras. And then the video from the cameras loops back to the HyperDeck SDI input. So that means all the cameras and all the recorders are all locked together in time, and they're all in sync. Now, if you do have a source that's non-sync, then the HyperDeck will actually sync it for you. So like obviously professional cameras can be referenced, so they'll all have references and they can reference to the output of the decks. So these decks, the first deck is locking the other decks and locking all of them. But computers are just going to output video and they're going to be coming in non-sync. So resync input just fixes it and everything gets aligned in time. It all records together. You get a perfect match of set of recordings. It's kind of like what an ATEM switcher does on all the video inputs. They have resynchronized and it resynchronizes everything, but you can do it without a switcher. So it's really exciting. Now that new software update, we've got a few other improvements in it as well. There's some deck control improvements. We always learn things when we're beta testing, and we had a bunch of improvements very late in the stage of development. So that new software update will be called 8.0.1, and I'm hoping it'll be posted on our website today. But if it isn't actually there today, it'll be within a few days, I'm hoping. So definitely look out for that update if you get a HyperDeck Studio within the next few weeks if you buy one of these new HyperDecks. So the new HyperDeck Studio HD Plus really in some ways is kind of a replacement for the old Mini. It's got a lot of the similar features, but it's got a lot more features as well. It's a really incredible model. And the good news is it's actually the same price as the old Mini model. So the new HyperDeck Studio HD Plus will be retailing at $695. So we think it's going to be exciting. Now, this model, the HyperDeck Studio HD Plus, is also available now. So I think it's going to be really cool. So it's a little bigger, but we think there's some huge advantages to this larger size. It's got everything a broadcaster working in HD would possibly need. Actually, I'll stop recording. Oops, where am I recording there? I really don't know how to use it upside down. Now, I want to talk about the older HyperDeck Studio models. Now, they had support for SSDs. So obviously, we wanted to replace these older models with a new design that also has support for SSDs. Now, the old models were called HyperDeck Studio and HyperDeck Studio Pro. Again, they were getting a bit old. We really were unable to do any new software updates on them. Plus, these old models only supported SSDs. They didn't actually have support for SD cards. They didn't record USB disks. So we're going to replace these models with a new one, the new model, sorry. And the new model is called HyperDeck Studio HD Pro. Now, it replaces both the HyperDeck Studio and the HyperDeck Studio Pro, but it's a lot more powerful. Now, it's a full width rack design, so it's got space for SSDs. And so let me bring one out and show it to you. So you can see here it is here. There it is. I'll set it on top so you can see. So you can see the front there. Now it's a much more modern design. But actually let's have a quick look at the back first, and you can see the connections because it's probably worth doing that. So camera guys, I'll turn it around. You can see it there. Now you can see it's quite similar to the HyperDeck Studio HD Plus model, That's because they're actually quite similar internally. They're both very similar design. What's most different about the design is actually the design itself, the industrial design of the product. This model is also 6G SDI, but you notice the timecode now uses XLR connectors. Now, timecode can be both BNC or XLR connectors, but XLR is obviously a lot more common because timecode is actually an audio signal, so normally it's used on XLR connectors. Otherwise, the rear connection is almost identical to the HyperDeck Studio HD Plus model. So we'll go back to the front and we'll have a look at the front. That's where you really see the differences. So I'll line it up at the front there. So you can see it's a whole new industrial design. So let me plug some power in so I can show you it running. And we'll plug a video input. We also need to move our monitoring connection from the Plus model up to this one. So you see it, there it is. So this model has SSDs. So let's do a recording and you can see it running. So there's an SSD. So we'll plug it in and we'll start recording. There it is. So you can see we've retained the SSD lights that turn around as we're recording and playing. Now we also have the SD cards in the front. You can actually see the SD card slots there and there, along with the SSDs. So that means we have 4 media slots in total. So you can bring SD cards up from the smaller Mini and Plus models up to this model. And you can also bring the SSDs from the older HyperDeck Studio models across as well. And of course, SSDs are physically larger, so they also can be they can be bigger, higher capacity. So I think this model is fantastic because it can take media from all other models. Now we've got the really nice transport controls on the front there. We've also got the speaker and headphone connection. But the big improvement is the search dial. We've got a wonderful new search dial. It's incredible. It's made from machined metal. It has like a natural inertia. It's actually steel. It's got mass to it. It's covered with a soft rubber coating, and it has an electronic clutch, so it stops when it's under command of the software. There's now also buttons that for selecting the search mode directly. We've got a shuttle, jog, and scroll button. So I can show you how this works. So what I'll do is I'll stop recording. What you can do is you can. One of the things I want to mention before I move on is the loop modes. You can actually press play multiple times to change the loop modes. So if you press play the first time, it'll just play. But if you press play again, it'll loop the first clip. The clip you're on. And if you press play again, it'll loop all the clips. So let me show you actually that. I'll hit play here. So you can see the, I'm playing now. If I push it again, it's playing one clip. Sorry, it's looping one clip, and now it's looping all clips. Sorry, I'd gone through the black bit where this video cycles around. So you can see pressing play multiple times will give you different loop modes. Anyway, so let's check out the search dial like I was talking about. So you can see that if I push the shuttle control, you can see now I've got shuttle, and you've got a really nice center detent position. It's harder here, of course, but you've got this sort of center detent there, which is in still, and then you can go to the ends of the shuttle range, and it'll show you the clutch will kick in and limit the travel of the search dial. Now if you push the jog control, which is there, now it free spins, and you can also see the loop, the light around the SSD moves with the jog. Now you can move to scroll. Now scroll is actually very similar to a fast sort of jog, really, but it's fantastic when you get a lot of media because you can move up and down the media really easily. So let's show you that. So you can see you can go to the end, and when you hit the end, it's a bit hard to hear that, but if I hit the end, so I'm hitting the start there, the clutch will kick in when you get to the start of media and actually stop the playback. So it's really cool. Now the menus also work with the clutch. So if I go into the menus, which I've got my menu button there, and so you can see that as I'm moving through the menus, the clutch will actually kick in. So it's really nice. It's very fast to use. That's kind of a nice feature. I'll get back out of the menus. That's a really nice feature because sometimes if you've got a setting down the end, you can run all the way down the end, the clutch will stop, and then you can just back a few steps, and it makes it much faster to get to the menus. So the new HyperDeck Studio HD Pro will replace the older HyperDeck Studio and HyperDeck Studio Pro models, but it's actually going to be the same price as the old HyperDeck Studio, so it'll retail for $995, and it's available now. I think it's a great replacement because it's got so many more features. It has a much better search dial. It's got both SSD media and SD card media. And obviously when we say SD cards, we also mean UHS 2 cards because all these new HyperDeck Studios actually also support UHS 2 cards on the SD card slot. Now the new models got H.264, ProRes and DNX file formats, as well as the new H.264 SDI format, which is 10-bit 422. It's got a dedicated monitor output with on-screen overlays. It records to USB external disks. It's got the faster 1G Ethernet for fast file uploads. It's got the reference and timecode generators built in. It's got the RS422 deck control output for triggering other decks. The USB will work as a webcam, so you can use any software on computers. It's got both HDMI in and out, and it also has better industrial design. So we're really excited by this model. We think it's a much better model than the older model it replaces, so it's pretty cool. But it does leave the HyperDeck Studio 12G model it needs replacing. The HyperDeck Studio 12G was the top model in the old HyperDeck family. However, it didn't do H.264. It didn't have a lot of the features that the new models have, like SD cards, for example. So today we have a fourth new HyperDeck Studio model. It's the new top of the family. It's called HyperDeck Studio 4K Pro. It's an extremely powerful full Ultra HD design. So let me bring it out and show you. Here it is here. So you see how it looks. It basically looks exactly the same as the HyperDeck Studio HD Pro. And it has the same connections. I'll show you the rear. There it is there. Now the SDI connections are 12G SDI in this model. Internally it's actually very different, as the electronics are completely different because it's Ultra HD. So I'll go back to the front. So I'll put it there and line it up a little. So it looks a bit better. Now from the front it actually looks exactly the same as the HD model because it works exactly the same way. So it's pretty cool. Now let me plug it in and I'll show you how it works. So now there's actually two AC power supplies on this model. I forgot to show you when it was the other way around. There's two AC power supplies with two AC independent AC connections for redundant power, and there's still actually the XLR DC input as well. So there's actually 3 different power inputs on it. So you've got really good redundant power. I'll move the monitor connection up to this model. So obviously the really big feature of HyperDeck Studio 4K Pro is Ultra HD support. So it does H.264, ProRes and DNX in all SD, HD and Ultra HD formats. But it also has H.265 support. So what actually happens is the codec changes depending on the video standard. So it does H.264 in SD and HD, but then it changes to H.265 in Ultra HD. So the deck will automatically change between H.264 and H.265 when it's switching standards. So to really summarize this, the deck will record in H.264 in all SD and HD formats up to 1080p 60. Then it'll record and play in H.265 in all Ultra HD formats up to 2160p 60. So of course it still has ProRes and DNX in all SD, HD and Ultra HD formats up to 2160p. And it also has the dual link outputs, the dual link 12G outputs. So it'll play back a ProRes 4444 file with fill and key in all formats up to 2160p 60. So you can even do live graphics with fill and key in Ultra HD at high frame rates. So let's play back some video and I'll show you it working. So there it is there. Let me hit play. So still looking at the card. So it is there. So I'll leave it playing on loop actually. So you can see, there it is playing Ultra HD. In fact, I forgot, I'll show you the shuttle and everything still works. Perfectly fine. That's all Ultra HD native now. So I'll go on loop. So it's wonderful, I'll leave it playing on the monitor because it looks great. So there's also one of the aspects I want to talk about with the H.264 files. Now this HyperDeck Studio 4K Pro will actually play back rendered files from computers in H.264. Now the other models won't play H.264 files from computers sometimes. It really depends on the software that was used to create the files. But this model works with H.264 and H.265 files from computers okay. Now what we're actually going to do is we're planning on updating the HyperDeck Studio HD models, so all these models, to include this feature so that they can all play back software rendered files. Just need to quite make it in time for the launch. Obviously the recording's okay and software reads the files fine. But what we want to do is we want to be able to use computers to render files and play them back. So we'll have all the models playing back rendered H.264 files soon. So keep an eye out for that software update. Now the other big change in this model is Ethernet. The HyperDeck Studio 4K Pro has 10G Ethernet, which means you can actually get transfer speeds up to 1.2 gigabytes a second. It's incredibly fast, and it's actually much faster than any of the media that you can plug into it can handle. So it's an extremely powerful model. It's got full Ultra HD in every feature. It's got all the benefits of the other models, but it's Ultra HD support. It's got Ultra HD support in all the codecs. It's got 10G Ethernet. It's even got the faster 10G USB-C connection, so the USB-C is even faster. We think it's an amazing model. That'll be priced at $1,495. Now this is actually the same price as the old HyperDeck Studio 12G, but they've got so many more features. So the HyperDeck Studio 4K Pro will be available today. So now we have a whole new family of HyperDeck Studios. It's a major update. The 4 models have a really good spread of features, and each model has been designed for a specific type of use. So it's really exciting. Now I wanted to talk about the Blackmagic Studio cameras. Now when we originally launched them, they were really innovative, but now we've got some new models. We've learned a lot. The original cameras were quite unique, but the technology's moved on, and there's so much more we can do now. The old model didn't have a touch screen, which is a bit of a limitation. The old model took too long to set up. Like the viewfinder, the sunshade had to be screwed on. You had to do all the screws and everything, so it was a bit annoying. And the old model had a lot less low light capability. So now it's time to replace these old models with the latest technology. So what this means, we're going to introduce a totally new model called the Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Pro. It's a native 4K camera, so it'll do both HD and Ultra HD video standards. Now this new model replaces both the older Blackmagic Studio Camera HD and the Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K models. So let me show it to you now. I'll bring it out and let's have a look. So it is here. So there you can see, there it is. And I'll spin it around so you can have a bit of a look. There it is there. So you see it's a radical change, but it's also, it's a bit familiar. The new model's made from carbon fibre reinforced polycarbonate, so it's much lighter. So you see there's the side and there's the other side. Now that really matters. Being lightweight really matters when you're carrying multiple cameras into a venue, which, we've all done. So there you can see the front. You can see it's a micro four thirds lens mount, which means you can use the lenses you already own. This new model also has amazing low light. It's 25,600 ISO, which means you can add up to 36 dB of gain, and there are 13 stops of dynamic range, so it handles some incredibly complex lighting situations. So let me show you how it performs in low light. Now we're actually using a Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Pro for this video, so I can actually show you on the camera I'm using to talk to you. But first I need a low intensity light source, so we thought we'd use some candles. So let me bring that out. There you go. Oops, I'll move the camera. And I've got a, so let's use this. I would love one of these to play with when I was a kid. Now, if we can turn off the studio lights, and we'll have to add some gain, wind the gain up on the camera. So if you guys could wind the gain up, you get a feeling for what the camera can do in low light. So that's 36 dB of gain, of course. It's amazing you can actually run the camera that high. There's a bit of noise at that gain setting, but I'm not going to tweak the color temperature a little bit, but you can see, I have to make sure the iris is open as well. But you can see the image is okay, and that's just very low light. Now this room's really big. It's got no close walls, so it's pretty black in here. It's almost dark, pitch black, so there's not a lot of walls to reflect the light. And if you see, you can actually see 3 shadows. Each candle's got its own separate shadow, and you can actually see that on the back there. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, we'll turn the lights back on. And, oh God, wow. We'll have to wind the gain down a bit there. We've got it a bit high. There we go, winding it down. And maybe tweak the color temperature, I think. So look, I think any venue is going to have a lot more light than candles. It's one of the, I better blow those out. Oh, smoke. So I think any venue is going to have a lot more light than some candles, but you get the idea. It's got some really great low light capability. Now, one of the other nice features of the camera has got a built-in color corrector. So it means you can add a real cinematic style of live production. And with the new sensor, you get so much more out of the color corrector than before. So it's really nice what you can create because you're getting just much better pictures into the color corrector. There's also been a big improvement in the audio. This new camera has much better microphones. They're located on either side of the viewfinder there, so which gives us a lot of stereo separation. Now the old model are actually on the lens mount, but this works so much better and they're just better quality microphones as well. Now the new model also has a much bigger tally light. It's much easier to see, especially from a long distance away. The old tally light was a thin one and it was a bit harder to see. Plus we have the number decals now, and they're included with the camera. So the pack of decals, you can put them on and they just sort of slip in. Now let's have a look at the side. In fact, I'll get rid of this cupcake and I'll move the camera over. So I'll move it across so you can see it. Now let's have a look at the side where all the connections are located to and from the camera. So you can see there, there's a bit of a shot there. If we can go in a bit tighter, maybe you can see them. So you can see the first output, there's a HDMI output. Now that works in HD or Ultra HD. The HDMI even includes camera control. So the switcher can control back through the HDMI. There's a 12G SDI camera output, which is the main camera output. There's a 12G SDI input program return. And the SDI input includes camera control from the switcher. And also the SDI connections to and from the camera is how we do talkback. So we're just using channels 15 and 16 in the SDI feeds, and that gives us two-way communication to the cameras. Now there's 10G Ethernet there, which I'll come back to in a moment. Now there's two types of power. We've got a normal sort of DC 12-volt jack, and that uses the same power supply as an A2 Mini. And we include a power supply with the camera. But there's also a 4-pin broadcast style XLR connector. So it's got very flexible power. Now the reason all the I/O connections on this side of the camera is this is the side you generally can attach them to the tripod arm. So it means that it's like a strain relief because you can attach them to that arm, and that arm's normally on the right-hand side. Now let's spin it around, we'll have a look at the other side. So these are the more like the local connections. Now you can see we've got two USB-C connections there. These are expansion ports, so you can use them for different uses. But what they do is they allow us to record Blackmagic RAW to external USB disks. So you can do a live production and then edit from a Blackmagic RAW file. Now that's amazing because Blackmagic RAW files are amazing quality digital film files, and they've got film gamma. So they look amazing when you do color correction in DaVinci Resolve. Now you'll see below them there's also two professional audio inputs, XLR inputs. Now these are incredibly low noise. We actually spent a lot of time on this. There's been a lot of engineering put into this. And the reason, because microphones are normally placed near the camera. So good quality audio is really important. You don't want to run extra cables back to the switcher. You can do it from the camera. So what that means is that extremely good audio is really important because that's the main audio source a lot of times you're using. Now the noise floor is so low, it's actually better than a lot of the cameras we test, microphones we tested. When we plugged the mic in, the noise went up because the microphone's noise was higher than the camera. So complete transformation in the quality of the audio inputs on the side of the camera. It seems like a small thing for video people, but for audio people it's super important. And it's the prime source of audio in a lot of live productions is actually the audio on the camera. Those inputs also have phantom power. And you'll notice we've also gone to a 5-pin XLR talkback headset. We've kind of gone away from that. Broadcast talkback headsets are much more common now. So we've kind of moved away from the aviation headsets that we used to use to now a more traditional broadcast headset. There's also a 3.5mm headphone socket. Now that headphone socket actually has a microphone connection in it, so it's compatible with headsets, the sort of gaming headsets and things. And also there's a 3.5mm video camera style microphone input. Some of those video camera microphones are really nice. So we've got compatibility with those is really important. And the 3.5mm microphone input for those video camera microphones is also extremely low noise, so it's really exciting. Anyway, let's plug the camera in and we'll check it out. So what I'll do is I'll mount it on top of a tripod, so it's a bit easier to see. Now, let me pull one out here. So here's our tripod. Now you'll notice that there's actually a tripod mount on the bottom of the camera. The new Blackmagic Studio cameras include a tripod mount, and the reason they include a tripod mount is it makes it much, much easier to set up. So you can see the plate here, so I can just slide it on. So let's mount it on. There it is there. Now this mounting plate that was on the tripod actually also comes with the camera. The whole assembly here, the mount and the plate come together. Now you'll notice that there's some holes in here for rail mounts. Now that really helps if you want to add a prompt or a matte box or something like that. So let's add a lens. So I'll take the lens cap off. And I've got a lens here. But like I'll show you, you got a shot there, that's a good shot. So I'll show you, you can see the lens there, sensor there. So there's the lens mount and the sensor. So we'll add a lens. There it is there. And we'll remove the lens cap, of course. I don't want to forget that. That'd be a very quick demo if I didn't take the lens cap off. And I've got some power here. Let's plug some power in, which is on the other side. I can tighten that up. There we go. Now let's connect some video cables. Now we're going to use input 6 of this switcher down here because input 6 is actually an SDI input. So I'll grab my output cable first. Plug into the SDI output. And I've got my program return feed, which I'll plug in. There it is. So we go. Now let's turn on the camera. There's a switch on the back there, you can see it, there it is. Now it's come up with the tally light, so I can put that on air. At the moment it's set to preview, so if I come across here, oops, I'll move my USB disk out of the way. I can put that on air, so you can see it's off, and then it's on preview, and then I can bring it on air. So you can see the tally light. You can see not only the preview, but you can also see the when it's on air. So it's really nice. Now the decals in the number can be changed. We put it on 6 because we're plugged in input 6, and the decals are included. So you just sort of pick your finger and then you can pull them out. Now we can also work with the 5-pin talkback headset, which we have a headset here. That just plugs into the side. I won't plug that in, but you can. The normal broadcast headsets work. Now let's have a look at the back of the camera. If you can swing it, I'll swing it around so we can show the rear from the side. There it is there. So you can sort of cut to the side view there. Now you can see the viewfinder on this angle, and the sunshade actually folds up. So what I'll unfold the sunshade, and you see it there. See the sides come out, and there it is. See, it looks really cool. Now this speed of setup really drove the design, and this sunshade's much faster to set up. Everything about the design was really about speed and speed of setting up. So you can see how nice that is. So you see there with the sunshade. It's really cool. It's a much nicer design than what we had before, but it also protects the screen. It just folds up and the camera's ready. Now we've got a large 7-inch viewfinder on this one. It's also a touch screen. I'll pan it around there a bit so you can see on that side camera. Now that was a big limitation on the old model. It didn't have a touch screen, so it does now. The viewfinder is a little smaller than the old studio camera model, but the larger screens kind of made the camera a bit bulky, so we really wanted this model to be more portable. So I think a 7-inch screen is a good size. Now the sunshade actually unclips and you can remove it. So let me unclip the sunshade and show you. There it is there. So you see it comes right off. There's a clip on the bottom, so you can see that there. Now it's also compatible with the Ursa Studio Viewfinder sunshade, so I'll bring one of those out and show you. That's the sunshade off an Ursa Studio Viewfinder. So that just clips on, and it screws up in the bottom there, which I won't do, but you can just screw those attachments. So you can see that sunshade there. So you see how it looks. So it's a bit of a different look. Now this one's metal and it's got felt on the inside. I think you can see it from that side view over there. You can see the felt, but it doesn't fold down. It does have a rising edge there, but it doesn't really fold down. The sunshade that's included does fold down, which I like that one better because it's much more portable. So I'll change back to that. And just clipped on. So now you'll also notice that we've got handles on the side. It's probably a better view there, isn't it? From the side there. You can see we've got the side handles. Now they protect the screen and all the controls because they've got knobs there. And you can also rest the camera on the handles when you're changing the lens. That's really nice. Now let's check out some of the controls. Now, it's actually a little bit similar to the Ursa Studio Viewfinder used on the bigger cameras. So you can see how it works. So I'll move it over there. You can see the controls. So you can see that they are there. So I've got brightness and contrast, which we can change. And there's also 2 ways to rotate these knobs. They're really nice. You can use 2 fingers like that, but you can also actually use your thumb from the side, which I quite like doing. Now there's also a focus peaking on an adjustable knob, so it's much nicer because you can adjust the focus peaking as you're zooming around. So the bottom knob here is the focus peaking. Let's bring that up. So you see there it is there. In fact, I'll autofocus. Oops, that's zoom. So I can get some. There we are. So you can see the adjustable focus peaking. That's really nice. Now, we've also got a program return button, which is up here, which is funny because it's actually the same source as we're sending to the switcher because we're on air. So you're actually just seeing it come back. And we've also got an F1, F2, and F3 button down the bottom here, and they can be programmed to anything. The knob up here is actually an iris control, so it's a local iris control. And we've got these pre-programmed, the F1 and 2 and 3 buttons are programmed to zoom, for autofocus and auto iris, but you can change them to anything. Now there's also touchscreen buttons on the LCD. These are very easy to use. So what I'll do is I'll take off the sunshade so you can actually see these better. So you can see that there. So you can see a bit of a better view. There's lots of on-screen controls. You can just push the different buttons. You've got shutter angle that comes up. You've got iris and gain and color temperature. They all just come up just by pushing the controls. Now the audio levels are actually done by pushing the meters. Oops, the wrong control up there. So you just touch the audio meters, you can bring up the audio controls there for audio levels. And if you want to access the main menus, you just push the menu button. And the menu button's the one up the right here there. There it is there. You can see you've got record settings, monitoring, audio, setup. And also the good thing is the presets can be saved. There's the presets there. You can save and you can generate and save presets onto USB thumb drives and copy them between cameras. You've got lookup tables. Lookup tables can also be saved and shared between cameras. Plus also you can actually load 3D lookup tables from DaVinci Resolve, which is really nice because you can actually save a color grade as a lookup table on DaVinci. Now it includes an RGB histogram, if you can see it on the bottom there. Now the great thing about an RGB histogram is you can see clipping in any specific RGB channel, which is really nice. And you can see as I change the camera gain, you'll see the histogram move. Now recording's really easy. There's an on-screen record button, which you can see down there. Now I'll plug in a USB drive so we can actually do a recording. There it is there. And now you can see the, whoops, didn't have it plugged in. Now you can see the discs come up and I can just push record. There it is. Now it's recording a Blackmagic RAW file to the disk. Now if you've selected video or extended video gamma, now that'll be saved into the file, but it's only metadata. It's not actually burned in. The files are always film gamma, which means you can keep that look. I mean, obviously when you open up those files in DaVinci Resolve, it looks great and you keep that look. Or you can turn it off and do a color grade. And these files look really incredible when you're doing a DaVinci Resolve color correction on them. So it's fantastic. Anyway, I'll stop that and remove the disk. So you can see it's really how much power this camera has. I'll put the sunshade back on so it kind of looks nice. We think it's going to be really exciting. Now the Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Pro will be priced at $1,795 and it'll be available starting today. So I think it's a really nice replacement for the older studio camera models and it's just so very nice to use. Okay, so now let's talk about lenses. Now on the original model of studio camera, some people wanted to use B4 broadcast lenses, but they're really a bit big for a compact camera like this. So we have the Ursa broadcast cameras for those lenses. So we thought a lot about lens options for this camera and it turns out photography lenses are very good. They're mass produced, they're actually made very precisely. Also, they're very high resolution, that's because they're used in photography. And they're almost parfocal. So we feel B4 broadcast lenses are really wrong for this camera. We think we can make photography lenses work. And the solution to that is all about control. If we can control a photography lens better, then we get broadcast lens features. MFT lenses aren't really quite as precise as B4 lenses, but not by very much. MFT lenses are not parfocal, but they're so well made, they're actually pretty close. So the solution here is all about lens control. If the way to make a photography lens into a broadcast lens is just to control it better. And that's what we've worked on. So we have a wonderful way to control the lenses on the new studio cameras. And we've really gone big on this. We've put a lot of engineering into it. So what we've done is we've developed a new focus and zoom demands for the studio cameras. So let me show you, I'll bring one out. So I've got one over here. I'll move the camera over a little bit so we can see. So you can see there's the, I'll move this USB drive out of the way. Got my cupcake down there. So you can see there it is there. So this is the focus demand. So you can see it's a very professional unit. It's very similar to expensive control, so it's very familiar to broadcast units. It rotates beautifully smoothly. It's got a nice rubber coating, so you see there. And it's got 2 USB connections, so you can see them there. That's why the camera has 2 USB connections. You know, you can use external focus while you're recording to a USB disk, so you kind of need 2 USB connections. So let's mount it on the camera so we can check it out. But the first thing I'll need to do is I need to add a second arm to the tripod, so I'll do that. So I've got another arm here. I'll put it onto the tripod. There it is there. Now I've got 2-handed control. I'll tilt that out a little bit like that, make it symmetrical. So that's really nice. It's really nice using 2 hands. The movements are so much smoother. It's so nice. So much control. Okay, so let's mount the focus demand on the camera. Now it comes with the USB cables, with the USB cable. Now the USB cable it comes with have a cable lock, so it's more reliable that way, but you can use any USB cable. So let's start by attaching the focus demand. So it just swings open like that, mounts onto the camera. Oops, we'll lift it up a bit. There it is there. so we can control that nicely. Now we'll get a USB cable. This is the USB cable it comes with. So we'll plug that in. I'll wrap it around the hand a little bit and plug it into there. Okay, now I can focus the camera. There it is. So I'll move the camera across so we can get a shot from the side. So you can see there. So you can see the focus peaking. So you can really see how nice it is. I'll turn the focus peaking up a bit more so you can see it. So you can see how you can focus through that range. So you can see the control is really nice. It's quite precise and it's very easy to use. It's pretty cool. And it's so nice to use, you know, I don't have to reach around to the lens. I can keep my hands on the tripod handles at all times. I can focus, it's really nice. Now, a lot of MFT lenses actually have power zoom. So what this means is it'd be good to have a zoom control, and we do have that. We've designed that as well, and it's called the Blackmagic Zoom Demand. So let me bring that out and I'll show you as well. I'll move the camera a little bit there. So here it is here. So I'll move the camera that way. So you can see there it is. So you can get a shot of that. It's got the mounting hardware on the side of it. So you can see it's really high end. It's got the main rocker here. It's very smooth through the zoom range. See there, you can use it with your thumb. There's also buttons located around the control, and you can locate them by feel, and they can be programmed for different functions. There's a really big one for the rocker there that you can use with your thumb. And that's normally programmed for the VTR, but you can change it. There's also a zoom knob, a zoom speed knob here. There's two buttons below that work with your fingers. So when you're holding onto it like that, you can access them with your fingers. See there? You can see those there and there. And again, they can be programmed. And there's also two buttons on the side that you can use with your fingers. There. And there's actually another one on the other side. So you can use it either left or right-handed, depending which side of the camera you want to mount it. So there's those lower buttons there. Now all these controls can be customized. So let's mount it on the handle. And the mounting hardware, like I was saying, is included. So it'll, and they use a standard rosette. So that's a rosette, standard rosette on the side of the controls. So you can use any custom mounting really. So let's mount it onto the camera. There it is there. So now each control has a loop through USB-C connection. So you can loop through the focus demand into the zoom demand, which means you only need one USB connection on the camera for both controls. So let's connect that up. So I've got another cable. Oops. I'll turn it around because that's where my mounting is. And I'll just sort of loop it around the cable arms here. I'm doing it quickly, so I'm not really lacing it up as nicely as I could. There we go. So I can zoom in and zoom out. I'll get the camera sideways so you can see there. As I'm adjusting, you can see there. Adjust in and out. Now with big controls like this, it does add a bit of weight. So you'll tend to find the camera will tilt back. So what you might do is you might need some counterbalance like weights to perfectly balance the camera. It's kind of the price, I guess, you pay for having these big, beautiful controls. They do add a bit of weight on the back side of the camera, so you can add a weight to the front. You can also shift the camera forward on the tripod. It really depends on the tripod you're using. So now I can control both the focus and the zoom. I don't have to take my hands off the tripod handles, and I can keep framing shots while I'm zooming. So let me show you. I think I've got a feed from the camera, actually, and also there's a shot on the side here. So I can zoom in, see how nice it is. And I can focus. So precise. Whoops. There it is. And zoom back. You can really see how nice it is. You know, you can still see it's in focus. It really shows you how good these lenses are. It feels very much like a broadcast lens. You know, once you've used a camera like this, it's a complete revelation. It's actually impossible to go back to a regular camera. It's just awesome. So I reckon these will be pretty popular. They're really nice. The focus and zoom demands, they're not available today. We're still waiting for a few parts to arrive, but they'll be available in a few months. Now the cost of the Blackmagic focus demand will be $245, and the cost of the Blackmagic zoom demand will also be $245, and you'll be able to buy them separately. That's nice if your lens doesn't have powered zoom. You can just get the focus demand by itself, or if the lens control is being done remotely, of course you don't need local controls on the camera. Now we've recently done a software update to the ATEM camera control panel, and that actually adds zoom and focus control to it. So the external switcher side control is getting even better all the time. So it's really exciting. Now there's really only one more way these new studio cameras could be better. The cables to the side of the camera are a bit of a hassle. These camera cables here. In some venues, it's really hard to run cables to cameras. You might want to use the building's network, for example, and there might not be any power at the camera end, and that's quite common. This is why the SMPTE fiber workflow is really so nice. All the video on the camera powers on the one cable, but the problem is SMPTE fiber cables are really expensive. So what we did is we added a copper 10G Ethernet port to the side of the camera. It's like a SMPTE fiber style workflow, but it's much lower cost Ethernet cable instead. It's professional, but it's also affordable. So you can do the whole camera with just one cable. But we do need a converter. We've got to convert back to the video world, so we've got a converter for the other end design for that. The name of the converter is called the Blackmagic Studio Converter. And let me bring it out and show you. Here it is here. Let me swing the camera around a little bit so that it's not in the way. There it is there. So you can see there's the converter there. Now this converter has a massive power supply in it, so it powers the camera. It's also got 12G SDI camera feeds, 2 program return feeds, you see on the back there. Now one of the program return feeds is for the viewfinder on the camera when you push the program button, but the second return feed actually overrides the HDMI on the side of the camera. So if you plug in the second program return feed on the back there, it'll actually output that video on the HDMI output on the camera. Now normally that HDMI outputs the camera video, but in this case it will be overridden. And the reason that's good is for teleprompters. So you can plug your teleprompter source into there and then get it out onto the front of the camera, which is really nice. So let's plug everything in and so you can see it working. Now first what we need to do is we need to unplug our SDI connections from the camera and plug them into the converter instead. So let's do that. So I've got my main program video out. Whoops. Just banged into my hyperdeck. So and I've got a bit of a cable mess here, so I'll plug that into the top connector. And I've got my program return feed here. I'll plug it into program return feed number 1. There we go. Plug the converter in with the SDI. Now I need to plug in some power the converter. There it is there. Now I'll unplug the camera power as well, so let me get rid of that. Now the converter is all set up and running. What we need to do now is plug in the camera. So we need to get an Ethernet cable to do that. So I'll get an Ethernet cable and I'll plug it in. So I'll put that there, and I've got a nice big Ethernet cable here. So what I'll do is I'll plug the one end of the cable into the converter, and I'll plug the other end into the camera, and I can swing it around and show you over there. So if you can see that shot there, there you go. The camera's come up. So you see that there. Now you can see I've got one cable connecting to the camera, and it's running on this single Ethernet cable. Talkback, tele, camera controllers, all via this one cable. So you only need to run a single cable in a venue. You can see the camera feed and status on the front LCD. There's also a speaker and headphone socket on the front of the converter. That's really nice for verifying the audio on the camera from the front of the converter, especially when it's mounted on a rack. So this is very fast to set up and it's really simple. So the Blackmagic Studio Converter will be available in a few months' time, but we wanted to show it to you now so you can get an idea of what the whole workflow. Now it'll be priced at $895. It's basically as powerful as our Blackmagic Studio fiber converter, but it uses copper Ethernet cable and not the more expensive SMPTE fiber cable. So it's much lower cost, but the workflow is exactly the same. It's really only limited by the 10G Ethernet cable lengths. And we've actually been getting longer cable lengths out of 10G Ethernet than we have been doing with 12G SDI. And as better cables are released over time, the distance will increase even further. Now, one thing that's interesting is it does switch to 1G Ethernet if you're running the camera in HD. So you can use older Ethernet cables, and you might find in some venues, and that's obviously quite common because 10G Ethernet is actually quite new. So one thing you'll notice actually about the converter, I'll move move it out of the way there. The converter is a bit deeper than the Teranex mini converters. It's got a bigger power supply. The converter needs to power Ethernet over long cables. So we needed a bigger power supply, which made the product deeper. So we have a new rack shelf to mount these for deeper products, and it's called Blackmagic Universal Rack Shelf. It's the same as the Panoramic Mini rack shelf, but it's deeper. It actually has holes in it, so you can mount any of the Panoramic Mini converters in it. But you can also mount 2 of these in the rack shelf, so you get 2 channels per rack unit. Now, when we have the converter available, we'll have these the new rack shelf available as well in a few months' time, and that'll be priced at $85, which is the same price as the Panoramic Mini rack shelf. That's not all we've got today. The Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Pro is really nice, but we actually wanted a model specifically for the A10 Mini. The original Blackmagic Studio Camera didn't actually have HDMI out, and the new Pro model is great, but it's got a lot of stuff we just don't need on A10 Mini. So we don't need TalkBack, we don't need SDI connections for those switches, but we really do want a great camera. You know, we want the same low light capability, we want a built-in color corrector, we want great microphones and a tally light. So what we want to do is keep the same great camera, but remove the stuff A10 Mini doesn't need. So you get a great model specifically designed for A10 Mini. Yeah, we want a model that's more affordable, and we've done that. We've called it Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Plus, and I'll bring it out and show it to you. So that one here. Here it is. So you can see if you can get a shot of that. Now it's got exactly the same quality camera as the Pro model has. It's got the same low light capability, the same color science, same resolution. It's a fantastic camera, but it strips off all the stuff you don't need. It removes stuff basically that costs a lot of money that you just don't need on A10 Mini. So we've removed the 12G SDI and the 10G Ethernet connection because they cost a lot of money. It also removes the balanced professional XLR audio inputs. They cost a lot because of the quality level that we achieved with those. We've also used a standard LCD screen for the viewfinder. The Pro model actually has a high brightness screen. This one's just got a standard screen. But we've still got the beautiful folding sunshade. And we include the tripod mount as well. We've got the same LCD controls with brightness, contrast, and focus peaking. We've got the same Blackmagic OS with all the menus and all the camera features. It's even got 3D lookup tables, and there's LCD, and there's custom presets. It's got the same built-in DaVinci primary color corrector as well. So let's plug it in and we'll check it out and you can see how it all works. So I've got a tripod here, I'll bring it out. Here we are, oops. Now I've already got the focus peaking, so let's mount the camera on the tripod. There it is there. Lock it down. Now it works with the same focus and zoom demand, so let's plug everything in. First we need some power. And we'll plug in the focus and zoom demand. Right. Now we have an A10 Mini that I can bring out. There it is, I'll hide it down the back here. And then we'll plug the HDMI in so we can use the A10 Mini to connect to it. Oops. There we are. Plugged in. There we are. Now this is a 4K camera, so the HDMI is actually Ultra HD, but it'll detect the A10 Mini's plugged in and it'll switch to HD, so we don't have to really do anything. So let's turn it on, we'll lift the sunshade up. There it is there. And we'll turn on the camera. There it is. Actually, it's already on. So nice. So what we'll do is we'll put the A10 Mini to air. So you can see there's the HDMI cable. So the tally light works via the HDMI cable. So you get video, but you also, the switcher talks back through the HDMI cable to the camera. So I can switch between inputs. Now I've got it on preview. So if I cut, it'll go on air. If I cut away from it, it'll go to preview. And I can go back on air. So you can see it's really nice. You can get the same framing and focus. It's really nice. Got focus there and power zoom. So you can see, if you can see over there, I'll get that other camera shot. You can see it zooming. That all works fine. So it's really good. Now the lens and the color corrector can be controlled via HDMI. So let's check it out using the ATEM software control. So down here I've got a computer that's actually connected to the ATEM Mini via USB. So the ATEM software control over here is talking to the switcher. In fact, I can do some cuts. You can see the tally light going on and off because now I'm controlling the switcher from here. So if I go to the camera page, this is where my camera control is, and it'll talk back from the HDMI to the camera. So I can do some iris control. So you can see it there. It's pretty cool. You can see that shot from the viewfinder. I can also do an autofocus. I can do color tint. So I've got, oops, didn't grab it well enough. So I can do all sorts of funky color tints. So that's controlling the color corrector in the camera. So I can even change the gain remotely from the A2 Mini in the interface here. So I can go in here and adjust up a bunch of gain. You can see the gain on the camera is getting higher. I can set it back down again. Oops, I've got negative. There you go, that's 0. So you can really see how the control is pretty much exactly the same as the Pro model, but it's all being done down the HDMI cable. Now the camera number doesn't need to be set on when you're using HDMI because it's automatic. It knows if you're plugging in input 1, it'll then control it as camera number 1. Otherwise, it's really similar to the Pro model. So you can even get some really long HDMI cables now. So you can actually get the cameras a good distance away from the A2 Mini. It's a really nice workflow. And then of course later you can add a HDMI to SDI converter to convert the camera to SDI if you're using larger switches that run with SDI. So the Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K Plus will be priced at $1,295 and it'll be available starting today. So that's about it for today's update. I think this is a really wonderful combination of live production products. We've got the 4 new HyperDeck Studio models, with powerful features on each model. And the best part's the prices haven't increased, but they have a lot more power. And the design is much better. They're just a much more logical family of models, and so it's great. And we have these 2 wonderful new Blackmagic Studio cameras. They're such a big change from the previous models, but I really love the focus and zoom demands. They're just so nice. We're actually using all the cameras in the studio here now. I'm so jealous. I want to be using the cameras not behind the camera, in front of the camera, but I can't wait to get out there and use them myself. I've just got to get second handles for my tripods. Plus we have the great Blackmagic Web Presenter 4K, which we're also using now for this video. So I really hope you like these new products, and I hope they help you with your work. I really can't wait to see how they're used. It's always the most exciting part of seeing how people use them. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon, and take care. Bye.